Shalom, shalom, Yisrael, Yehonathan Daweh with you here, Yahweh for Christians, on the second day of Unleavened Bread. All right, this is the second day that our Savior was in the grave for you and for me. So this is a Kodesh time. Today we're going to be talking about the Abib. We had Passover, Pesach. Yesterday we had Unleavened 1. Today is Unleavened 2. I'll be giving us a broadcast from here on the YouTube channel every day till the 8th day. I'm entitling this Abib, the earthly witness. Abib, the earthly witness. Now, yesterday we talked about there's only 4 months of the year that Yahweh gave a name to. And the reason he gave a name to those months because those months house the other 7 appointed times. Shabbat is also an appointed time, so we really have 8 appointed times to meet with Yahweh. The 4 months that have a name are Abib, Zeph, Ethanim, and Bul. Abib, Zeph, Ethanim, and Bul. And those are the months where all the feast days or the appointed times are. All of the appointed times are not feast days. So they're not feast days, not all of them. This one is though, however. Then we also talked about how many months are there in a year. I went to 1 Kings 4 and 7 through 19. In 1 Kings 4, we see that Shlomo is setting up his administration. He had one governor appointed for each month of the year for their particular duties in his administration. He had 12 governors. So I think that answers the question about how many months there are in a year. Solomon, the most wisest man on earth, would know how many months there are in a year. He only chose 12 governors, but only had 12 years. And then we also talked about how, the whole earth, the Satan seeks to change times and laws. We know we're ending the end of this age, which is 6,000 years. I think yesterday on the broadcast I said 7,000, but 7,000 years is the end of the millennial kingdom. The end of this age will be on the 6th day, the end of the 6th day, 6,000 years. We're coming to that time now. Based on your calculations, it could be anywhere from 28 days to 169 days. 28 years to 169 years, or even longer. But we do know that we are ending the 6,000th year of this earth, which would then usher in the millennial kingdom. That's just another 1,000 years. Then after that, with that 7,000 years, that begins the end of all age, end of all time. We will not need the sun, moon, and stars to calculate the times. Now, one of the things about the Abib is that it is the earthly witness. The heavenly lights give us 4 patterns of change of the seasons. It's just like a snow globe. You have that snow globe and that dome and you shake it up. But as a child, I had one, and you may have too, where you have this dome with lights in it, and you put it in the floor, and it puts lights around your room, around your ceiling of your bedroom. Well, where do you think they got that from? Because we are living on a flat earth. And over it is a dome. And Yahweh has his lights in the dome. And they rotate to the west for us reading the times. Okay? Now, we know that the spring, in the beginning of spring, that is when day and night have equal amount of time. The day, that's when you know when you're in spring. The daytime, on the first day of spring, day and night are equal. Then you have the summer. The first day of summer is the longest day of the year. Then after that, you have what's called the fall solstice where night and day are equal again. After that, you have the winter solstice where the nighttime is the longest, the first day is the longest night of the year. These are 4 patterns that happen every year. Man cannot alter that, he cannot change that. You have 4 times of the year where you have the longest day of the year, the shortest night day of the year, and you have equal times of day and night. That happens 4 times of the year. Moshe said in Deuteronomy 30:19 that he calls heaven and earth as a witness against us. So there must be witnesses in heaven and on earth. You have to have 2 witnesses to establish anything. The sun, now if you have is a watch, okay? I don't even have a watch down here, but each part of the watch has its own measure of time. The sun is like the second hand, okay? It measures each day. It is the fastest moving element of our time. The moon is like the minute hand. It's counting a longer measurement of time. And the stars are like the hour hand. It's counting an even larger measure of time. So you have the sun, moon, and the stars counting different parts of time. They are marking and dividing time into different sizes, okay? You have time, and you have the sun, moon, and stars that are marking portions of that time. And let's go to 1 Chronicles 12:32, because this has always been known by man. We're the ones confused now because Hasatan seeks to confuse times and laws. But we have always been very accurate historically in marking time. In fact, we have one of our tribes who specialized in marking time. They were so accurate in it that the whole house of Israel ceded the knowledge to them to direct them on how to do it. This is what Dawid did in setting up his administration and his men of Israel. In 1 Chronicles 12:32, it says, the sons of Issachar who had understanding of the times. So Issachar was a tribe that specialized in letting King David know what time of the year it was for him to make his decisions, such as when was the Abib, and all of the feast days, all the Kodesh Moedim. Matthew 2, and it's not just the Israelites, our cousins, the Ishmaelites. Let's go to Matthew 2:1-2. Matthew 2:1-2. It says, now after Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, look, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. These are your cousins. Saying, where is he who has been born king of the Yahudim? Because we have seen his star in the east and have come to shahai him, come to worship him. So they were marking time. They were looking at the stars, which is the largest measure of time. The stars, the constellations, they move westward. They go westward. And this is, for me, I'm having a difficult time in reading the stars. I'm new at this. It's even hard enough to even read the moon. But they didn't even have the equipment we have, and they were able to accurately mark time. This also disproves how stars are light years away, unimaginable amounts of millions of miles away from us, because there's no way a star can point out a specific time from that far away that we can follow, because any movement would be imperceptible. They were able to follow the star as it moved and directed that Yahushua was born. So obviously they are close by. They're only about 3,000 miles away. Now, some of the things you might want to use to help watch the moon, I have monocular, okay? You also may want to use binoculars to help you to see the edges of the moon, okay? And they didn't even have that. But to be able to more accurately see whether the moon is complete or which stage of it in you might need some help for your eyes. So we see that it is possible in ancient times to accurately predict the times by watching the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's how they was able to pinpoint that Yahweh Shua himself was born. Our cousins, the Ishmaelites, pinpointed, and they were accurate to the day. There are many types of calendars that we use to help us mark time. The four major ones are the Helio calendar. Now the Helio calendar, and there were a couple of Helio calendars. The second Helio calendar, is very popular with the traditional Jewish sector. They like to use this calendar. And I don't know a lot about this calendar, but it is not Torah. The Enoch calendar is probably the most ancient, and it has a 364-day calendar. Obviously, we're not using the Enoch calendar because we have 365 days. The Kiryat Jew calendar is a third major type calendar people are using, and it focuses on the Abib, but it doesn't take into account the stars. So it's good that the Kiryat calendar does account for the Abib in marking time, but they're not accounting for the stars. And remember, we need the stars to calculate the year. And then the calendar that we should be using today, for right now, I'll call it the Heaven and Earth calendar. And this calendar is when the sun determines the Heaven and Earth calendar considers just that. It considers the sun, the moon, the stars, and the Abib. So we have to use all four elements to accurately mark time. This way we can accurately read Yahweh's appointed times. It is important. Like I said yesterday on the broadcast, if it was not important, then you can get up anytime you want to go to work. If time is not important, if it's not important to accurately mark time, then don't matter when you go to the airport to go to your trip. Get there when you get there, and the plane is supposed to be ready. Obviously, that is absurd. Times are important, and Yahweh has appointed times that he's going to be at a certain place, and he expects you to be there to meet him. So we need to study this. And especially if you're a man of Yah, you need to be the leader in this in studying the marking of time. Now, in using what I call this, the Halil calendar has a 19-year pattern of correction. And this is the main contention I have against the Halil calendar, Halil 2 calendar. Because what it does is, it's saying that Yahweh's time needs to be corrected. That whatever it is, every 19 years or so, they have to fix Yahweh's time. And obviously, that can't be accurate. And on the Enoch calendar, it's a solar-only calendar. And so we know for today, that's not accurate. But, believe it or not, we will return to the Enoch calendar. But that's not going to happen until after that sixth seal earthquake that's going to affect the entire western hemisphere of the earth. The entire western hemisphere is going to be shaken with this earthquake, and it's going to knock us back into what will be an Enoch calendar, a 364-day calendar, what we'll be using in the last 3.5 years of this dispensation of the earth's time that's going to lead to the millennial kingdom. So we will be on for 3.5 years. This Enoch calendar leads us to the millennial kingdom. But right now, we're not on the Enoch calendar. And then the Kiryat Jew calendar, it focuses, like I said, on the green ears, but it's using that crescent. And that is definitely not biblical, because that is what our Islamic brothers use. And you might want to, like I said, use some kind of device to help you look at the moon on the extreme ends of it, in the conjunction to the left and the conjunction to the right, and to see whether it's actually a full moon. Because I know in the app that I have, it actually said the full moon was yesterday. Now, according to my observation, it was the day before. So hey, you know what? Be it as it may, it could be a day off or two because it's very difficult to actually see whether it's a full moon or not. You know, so maybe I could have been off a day, I don't know. But I'm definitely not going to be off 2 months. Like we've had some of our brothers who celebrated Pesach in the middle of winter. That is not only wrong, it's sinful. Where can you find it anywhere in the Bible of celebrating the beginning of the year with snow on the ground? We had our biggest snow event on the east coast of America during the time of their Passover. Now, if I'm a day off or two, hey, we're all practicing. We're all trying to learn this thing, and that's fine. But you cannot be off by a whole season. That's literally you have the wrong job if you're a leader and you're directing people to do that. You need to have another kind of job. Now, in Exodus 12, 1 and 2 is when Yahweh instituted the Pesach. He says that it will be the first month of the year for you. That's what he said out of his own mouth. That now, whatever it was before, this is the first month of the year for you. You're gonna mark time based on this day and this month that you came out of bondage. This is the day that I created a nation out of another nation. In a day a nation was created. I birthed you on the 1st of Abib. So this is significant. It's so significant now it is the new year. So it is that important. It is that important. In Exodus 13 and 4, he says, this is the day you go out. Everything is new. He created all things new at this time. In fact, he even says, your first son is mine. The first of the cattle and the beasts were his. Everything first is his. When you give your offering, the first of your increase goes to Yahweh. So it's not just that this is the first of the year. It is also the first of your seed. The seed in your body, the seed in the ground, the first of your increase, your produce, all goes to Yahweh. I think we need to follow what Yahweh says. If he says something, it must be important. Otherwise, he wouldn't say it. Yahweh does not waste words. He's not like us. Let's read Exodus 23 and 15. It says on Exodus 23, 15, you will keep the feast of unleavened bread. You will eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you, at the time appointed in the month of Abib. At the time appointed. You ever have a dentist appointment? Did you come when you feel like it? And it says, because in it you came out of Misraim, none will appear before me empty. So when you do this, I hope you brought an offering. You should give. You are commanded to give. You don't come before Yahweh celebrating this time empty-handed. He brought you out of bondage. You ought to be grateful, give gratitude, and you need to give. I hope you help this ministry and do some giving to this ministry here. I told Yahweh for the support I do get. In Exodus 34:18, Yahweh says, you will keep this appointed time 7 days. Now here's what we need to remember. This is a renewed covenant. This is a revelation of expounding covenant, because remember, we had already broken it. All this had to be added, or just added, I can say, because we broke the covenant already. Yahweh had no need or attention to having to have all this specifics documented for us. But when Moshe came down with the covenant, and Yahweh was going to marry us, he found us already in harlotry and idolatry, worshiping the ox, following behind the Erev Rav, okay, the Edomite brothers who led us into this idolatry. So we already broke it. Now we got all these that we have to follow to help teach us. Before, we loved him with all our heart, might, and soul. We could have done this in our hearts. Now he has to go ahead and specify it for us. Now, I had to look up about this green ears, this Abib. The Abib, which is a barley, this is the first crop of Israel. It's a barley crop. The Abib is a barley crop. It's not wheat. Okay, it's not spelt or anything like that. It's not rye. It's barley. And barley is very interesting. It has so many stages to it. And this is why Yahweh used it, because there's a lesson in the barley crop. Very detailed, but I'm not going to go into all that. And even some of them I'm still learning myself. But in the barley, of course, you have to first have germination. Then after germination, you're going to have the seedlings being established. Then you get a leaf produced. You get that leaf, you finally get a leaf produced. Now, of course, in all the vast land of Israel, everything is not going to produce at the same time. So it's wherever the first one produced, that is going to be the earthly signal of spring. Even if another part of Israel didn't have any green ear shoot, whoever had the green ear shoot, that's why all the elders had to go look for it. After that, you have what's called tillering. Then you have stem elongation, pollination, and then kernel development. The first leaf signals that spring has begun. Now, there's going to be a first leaf, then a second, a third, a fourth, and then a fifth. Barley has a predictable pattern to it of development, and it has these 5 ears. And then there's what you call tillering. Each leaf has its own tiller. So, or each shoot has on. Then you have a stem which has 3 detectable nodes. And this is very interesting. I looked at a lot of video on this, and it's very interesting how the predictable pattern of barley is. You have that each has 3 nodes, and then you have what's called the flag leaf. After the flag leaf, you have the collar, and then what they call a boot. And then you have the leaf sheath opening. Now, when that leaf sheath opens, that's 2 weeks into spring. So this is an excellent marker of the development of the new year. And then you have, and then when you have that, that's when you have the wave sheaf offering. This is why it must be followed, because we know that at that point, when you have this sheath opening, you have about 2 weeks into the spring. And then you can offer the wave sheaf. Who was our first wave sheaf? Exactly, Yahweh Shua. And it marks when he came out. And right now we're on the 2nd day. Okay, we're on the 2nd day of him being in the earth for us. This is still a sad time right now, because if we were there during the time of Hamashiach's sacrifice, he laid down his life on his own. No one can take his life. He voluntarily laid down his life. He gave himself up as a whole burnt offering. He was in his 2nd day in the grave at this time. Now, so in following all this, the barley marks all of this. The barley Abib marks all of this time. So it's very important. This is something that's boring to a lot of people, but if you love Yahweh, if you have an intimate relationship with him, this is what you will be studying. Because it's important. Because here's a fact, Yisrael, the groom is returning. When Yahweh speaks, he means what he says. He is going to return. And if you're not ready, then you're going to miss it. And that is worse than missing a plane, train, boat, or anything else. It's bad, because it's eternal. Now, in this development of this barley, you have the head emerges. Even the head, it has stages when that head emerges, okay? Because you have a flowering, it flowers, then on the inside is milk, then it gets more denser consistency and it's what they call a dough. Then finally, when it's matured, it's a hard grain. When that is offered, it has to be all hard grain. Can't be none of that dough in there when it was put on the altar, because that's a low quality. You cannot give Yahweh a low quality offering. And to make sure all that dough was hardened, and that way it can be ground and put on the altar. For the grain offering, the oil and frankincense added to it for a grain offering. There's another offering where there's the offering of jealousy will have no oil or frankincense on it. So this takes study, and I'm learning so much. Even still, I'm learning so much. There are different types of offerings, different types of grain offerings, and what goes on and what doesn't go on it. So the Abib barley is the earthly witness. If it is not seen, there is no Passover. I don't care who you're following. If it is not seen, there is no Passover. Now, like I said, we could be off a day or two. I could be off right now a day myself. I'm not off more than a day. But we are practicing. We are not in Yisrael. All of this applies to what is seen in the Kodesh Eretz, the holy land of Yisrael. We are not in there. But he said this to be kept throughout all of our generations wherever we are. So wherever we are, we're supposed to go ahead and do this to the best of our abilities. We're not going to just say, oh, forget it, we can't do it, and live up our best life and ignore the bridegroom's directions and instructions because we're not in Yisrael. That is gross disrespect and laziness. So even though we are not in the Kodesh land, wherever you are, you're supposed to be going by these same signs and signals, these same markers to help look for Yahweh Shua, to meet him at his appointed times. But in doing that, we should not be whole seasons off. We should not be 30 and 60 days off. Maybe a day or two. Yahweh knows what you're doing. Be sincere in your heart and try this. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23, 9 through 12. Leviticus 23, 9 through 12. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give to you and reap its harvest, then you will bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. This is the wave sheaf. He will wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted on your behalf on the day after Shabbat. The priest will wave it. So on the day after Shabbat means on a Sunday. This always happens on a Sunday because it's on the day after Shabbat. Remember, the only day given a name is Shabbat. So it says the day after Shabbat, you have this wave. And then from there, you're going to count. So let's go a little further. Let's go to verse 15 and 16. On verse 15 of the same chapter of Leviticus 23, it reads, and you will count for yourselves from the day after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths will be completed. Count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you will offer a new grain offering to Yahweh. And we know that new grain offering is going to have leaven in it. So right now, this is not the exact day because we know that Yahweh Shua rose on the first day of the week. Well, the third day of this year's Pesach and unleavened bread is going to be on a Tuesday. So we're not going to be on the exact day. This is not the exact day this time. But we still have to count from Sunday. So when Shabbat comes up, the next day will be what we call Sunday. We count 7 weeks from there before we have our Shavuot, which is the next appointed time. So this is why we see that the Abib is so important, because if we get this wrong, if we get the Pesach wrong, which Yahweh Shua is the Pesach, and we don't read the moon right, and if you need to help hey, get some goggles to look at that moon to make sure it is complete. If we get that wrong, then of course unleavened bread starts wrong, and then of course the count to Shavuot is wrong. So everything like dominoes falls. We need to get this one right. And it is the appointed time of Yahweh's feast, not ours. It is his time and that he commands us to do. So we're going to do next week, actually tomorrow, I apologize. Tomorrow, unleavened bread, part 3, time. We must get it right. We're going to talk about time. We must get it right. So until then, subscribe and like. Just give me some support. At least that. If not, you can even give more support. I will accept it all. And this is Yehonathan Dawid with you here, Yahweh for Christians. Shalom, shalom. Shalom Elohim. Peace be on you.